journey beyond imposter syndrome. This is where I invite you into a space where high achievers and spiritual leaders converge to redefine success and self-worth. By sharing transformative stories and engaging with thought leaders, this podcast serves as a roadmap for navigating the complexities of imposter syndrome. It's an intimate look into overcoming personal barriers tailored for those who value wisdom, leadership, and intuition in business and life. Join me at the Humble Warrior Podcast with Alani Bankhead. Welcome to the Humble Warrior Podcast. I'm your host, Alani Bankhead. And you guys, we're going to talk today about my number one thing I get messages about, which people are constantly asking me, how do I know that I'm a humble warrior? How do I know that I am experiencing imposter syndrome? And even though in the very beginning, I talked through what the behaviors surrounding imposter syndrome look like, check out episodes 1 and 2. In reality, there's some other things that are happening peripherally in your day-to-day that point to the fact that you are actually in the humble warrior community. And so why this is really important is because most of you are operating on autopilot, you guys. And I say this with love. You're trying to do your very best. You're working so hard to be of service to so many other people, and that is amazing. But you're often chasing something, right? Rather than operating purely from a position of power and joy and thriving and having the overflow be the product of that, you're operating from a place of scarcity. And so we're going to break down today what the actual characteristics are of a humble warrior, because what I want you guys to walk away with is an understanding that once you can identify the basic core of who you are, why you're here, what you're meant to do, you can do so with intention rather than doing it accidentally or by default, which is what a lot of my clients end up doing. So for those who've never actually worked with me one-on-one, a lot of the clients that I have on some level are doing their life purpose without really realizing it. And so until we can dig into that and start peeling the layers back and discovering the core of who the individual is, we're not really going to be able to get to that thriving place that we really want. It's like throwing darts at a dartboard. You're not quite sure where it's going to land. Everything I do, whether it's the podcast, the book, the different group coaching events, one-on-one coaching, my keynote events, it is all focused around getting you to create that clarity for yourself so that you know exactly what you're here to do and who you're called to serve and how you're called to do it. So without further ado, we're going to get to the 7 key characteristics of a humble warrior. So number 1, honey, you are introspective to a fault. Like, I love some good me time and trying to identify ways that I can improve. But we do this way beyond what most people do. And doing things like asking constantly for feedback, right? Hey boss, what's something I can do better? Or when somebody tells you that you did a great job or they praise you for something, you flip it around and say something like, oh, thank you so much, but I always feel like I can constantly be improving. So what's something you think I can improve on? And if you're getting that feedback from people and they're like, nothing, literally nothing, it was amazing. And then your brain's doing that thing where it's saying, they're just saying that to be nice, or they don't really mean it, or maybe they don't have the courage to say that to me. So there's a whole lot of stuff happening right there. But the key thing I want you to walk away with is you are not like most other people. Most other people don't have the courage to be as introspective and self-actualizing as you do. And so this is a double-edged sword for you. Even though your introspection actually makes you a better player, at this point in your life, if you're listening to this podcast, it's because you've basically maximized your own abilities and done everything in your own power to get to that place of thriving, and you haven't. And you're trying to figure out what else you can do to get there. Stop asking for feedback is the number one thing I'm going to tell you, and learn how to trust your gut. That's the second thing I'm going to tell you. Because the reality is that your gut is right the vast majority of the time, and you know it. Okay. I'm just here to affirm what your intuition has been telling you this whole time. Now, an external little exercise I would love for you guys to play in if you want to see whether I'm right or not. there is this fun group on Reddit called Am I the Asshole? It's abbreviated AITA, and they have it on Facebook and different other social media platforms as well. The whole purpose of these platforms is for people to go on there and ask, Am I the asshole for doing dot? And you guys, I love this thread so much because 85% of the time, the person that's asking the question is clearly not the asshole, right? So NTA is one of the responses you can receive if you post on the Am I the Asshole Reddit page. You can also get YTA, which is you are the asshole. Or you can get the esh comment, which is like, esh, nobody's the asshole, or maybe both of you are the asshole, or maybe there are other key players that are assholes, right? But this thread has been so helpful for me in my own development because you can see yourself in that thread where you can see the overthinking and introspection happening. And these people are saying, like, I genuinely thought I did the right thing, but somebody is completely responding in a way that I think isn't right, or that I didn't mean for them to react that way, or what's happening, right? And sometimes we need some external sources to tell us, no, you're not the asshole, honey. They're gaslighting you. They've got their trauma response that they're working through, or maybe they've got other stuff to deal with, or they're projecting something onto you that has absolutely nothing to do with you and has everything to do with them. And so go to the AITA pages and look at the questions and see the responses. And if you resonate with reading something and saying, no, this person clearly is not the asshole, and then you find other people are in agreement with your feedback, this is a good indicator that you are introspective to a fault. And we need to dial that back. Okay. Now, characteristic number 2. We are control freaks. Oh man, we love control because control is actually a mechanism for us to get to what we want, right? If we can control things, we can control outcomes. And we love to harness our anger to work for us. Now, this can manifest in lots of different ways. It can be something as benign as to-do lists. Who here loves a to-do list? I love, love, love my to-do list. I'm ruled by them. I have them on my whiteboard, on my phone, on my papers here in my journal. And so we like to be in control, but you're not in control of anything except for the work that you do for other people. So what I mean by that is you love control, except for when it comes to your own personal self-care. So of all the to-do lists, the one around us being healthy, taking care of our bodies, making sure we're getting sleep, taking care of our finances, putting our oxygen mask on first, that is the last to-do list that we will ever focus on because we're too busy focused on everybody else. Now, there is definitely a time and a place for control. It can be really helpful. So, as an example, a child going to touch a hot stove, you scream at them, right? You take control of the situation. You're harnessing your anger, but it's not to hurt anybody. It's actually to help save someone from being badly injured or even dying. And so control can be an incredibly powerful tool at the right time. Unfortunately, the humble warrior doesn't operate in anger most of the time. You actually operate best living in like peace, joy, synergy, passion type spaces. These are very creative spaces. Most humble warriors are actually visionaries. So you can see a future that doesn't exist yet. You know how to get there, and that's part of your gift to give to the world. And where you need to make a shift in order to transform and let go of the scarcity mindset and really embrace your abundant future is surrendering and letting go of being a control freak most of the time. Now, surrender can be a very scary word for us control freaks, but the reality is that this is where you have an opportunity to cultivate your own spiritual beliefs, right? So, for those who haven't spent any time with me, if this is your first podcast episode you're listening to, I would really encourage you to check out the other episodes on spirituality. So you can call it spirituality, you can call it the metaphysical. Basically, how I define it is something that you know to be true, but you don't have any evidence exists. So if you're a person that follows a traditional religion, such as Christianity or Judaism or Islam or something like that, you have a structure already in place that tells you what your belief system should look like. If you don't like structured religion, or if you feel called to a different type of spiritual practice, such as nature is a really big one with my clients. There's something very ethereal and spiritual about being out in nature where you feel very connected, right? What's most important is that you understand what your personal spiritual belief system is and lean on those truths when things get difficult. And so when we talk about surrender, it can be a scary topic, but the reality is that surrender is actually something that we do to gain power, not to give it away, which sounds very paradoxical. And the world will tell you that surrender is a position of weakness, right? When we talk about going to war, an army surrendering is not a good thing, right? It means that they've lost. But the reality is that when an army surrenders, what they're saying is, we don't want life to continue to be lost, whether it's ours or other innocent people's or buildings or landscapes or whatever it might be. We are surrendering to stop the violence and so that the world order can be restored. And so, from that perspective, it's a little bit of a shift where you start to see that they are actually doing it more from a place of power in the bigger scheme of things, right? Tactically speaking, it never feels good to surrender. And it will feel scary the first couple of times that you surrender to something outside of yourself. But this is a really important element of being a humble warrior, and your ability to self-actualize is surrendering to something bigger, trusting that things are working themselves out for you. And characteristic number 3, when it comes to humble warriors, you have a tendency to crush everyone else's goal. So the control freak characteristic and this one really do go hand in hand. And you're what I call team get shit done, or the get shit done task force. And you're the person that you're super reliable, you're very service oriented, you're clearly humble. It's all in the name, right? You're a team player, you're a very loving person. And you are known as someone that everybody wants on their team because you make magic happen, except for your own goals. And so that is characteristic number 3. Now, characteristic number 4. Sometimes, or maybe a lot of the time, you think that there's something wrong with you. You might feel like people act weird around you, or you feel like you don't necessarily belong anywhere, right? You think you're being as helpful as possible, but maybe it's not always received as well as you think it should. Or maybe you thought you'd get a promotion and it didn't happen. So I have some news for those of you who've been turned down for promotions. And yes, it totally hurts and it sucks. But guys, B players don't pick A players, they pick C players. So oftentimes with a humble warrior, people see how brightly you shine and your light intimidates them. So you just being you super intimidates them. There's that great quote by Denzel Washington that goes something like, "Your light irritates other people's demons." And so when people act weird around you, again, it doesn't have anything to do with you. It has more to do with them than anything else. And I bet you in these situations, because I know they're coming to your mind, you've approached that person, you've been very direct, you've asked them for feedback on if you did anything to offend them. And the answer is always, no, you haven't done anything wrong, right? It's because they know that they're the problem. They just don't want to admit that. And so if you think that there is something wrong with you, there isn't. You're perfectly perfect the way that you are, flaws and all. And you need to actually turn the brightness up, is what I'm telling you that you need to do moving forward. Now, on the flip side, there is something else happening too in terms of your feelings around fitting in. And the truth is that you might also not feel super connected because you are actually really disconnected from yourself. And that brings us to characteristic number 5. So you're actually craving deeper connection as a humble warrior, and you've done everything that you can to try to make that happen, and you don't understand why it's not happening, and it's really frustrating you. And the reality is that you lack the deep connections because, first and foremost, you don't have a solid connection with yourself. And once you're able to establish a good connection with yourself, you're going to start to feel like you do fit in because everywhere you go, there you are, right? You fit in no matter what, and it doesn't matter what people say or do, that's not going to change at all. And so once you're able to establish a deep connection with yourself, you're going to be able to connect with other people on a deeper level. This also applies to processing past pain points. I think it's Rumi who has a quote that says something to the effect of, the wound is where the light enters, right? So, way back in the day, I had some institutional betrayal happen. So, the agency that I was working for, I felt like they did me super dirty on this professional venture. I was really hurt because I'd given them everything and I'd been as humble as I possibly could be. And I was always taught you keep your nose down, you do the work, and good things are going to come. And good things weren't coming. And it really hurt me. And even though that pain was super, super deep and it was really not fun to experience, what I realized over time was the depth of that wound actually also allowed in a lot of really good stuff. So I remember experiencing a feeling in my heart one time where it felt not like my heart was growing bigger, but more was able to penetrate because of that deep wound. And so, what I mean by that is because I experienced this really deep, painful wound, I was actually able to connect with other people just like you. And in that pain, I was able to help somebody else get through their suffering, right? So, turning my pain into purpose actually resulted in me feeling more connected to myself and more joyful and getting to that thriving space. Because it feels really good when you're able to turn pain into purpose and you're able to help someone else out in a really dark place, and you're their light to get out of it, right? And so that relationship all starts with yourself and how you choose to react to different events. Now, when it comes to romantic relationships, another characteristic of a humble warrior is that with romance, you tend to hang on well past the expiration date of a relationship because you're constantly looking to take responsibility for whatever isn't going well in the relationship. You're constantly giving the benefit of the doubt. And yes, these are wonderful characteristics and they serve you really well, except that you and I both know that a lot of those relationships, you should have been out of them way sooner than you actually were. And so, one of the curious things that's happened over the last 7 years of me being in business is I have this funny stat that about 9 out of 10 clients that I have who were single when they get to me. It's so funny because even though we're usually talking about imposter syndrome manifesting in professional settings, somehow session 1 also goes back to, and I'm single and I'm miserable and I don't know what I'm doing wrong. But within a year, 9 out of 10 of those single clients are partnered. And I'm not talking about just some willy-nilly light relationship. They're messaging me to say, oh my gosh, I think this person really is the one. They're super incredible. Or I'm getting engagement notices. It is the funniest and probably one of my favorite stats that I have. And so once you're able to connect with yourself, now you're able to open yourself up to other people because you understand what your basic needs are and you understand that you truly are worthy of receiving the love that you give to so many other people. And I truly believe that God or the universe or whatever you call it is not going to send you that person until you're ready and they're ready. And why wouldn't you want to get to doing this incredibly powerful work of establishing a deeper connection with yourself? Once you open yourself up to it, all the magic starts happening. So, characteristic number 6, you're not actually where you want to be professionally, financially, or otherwise romantically, right? So here's the thing is my humble warriors are the most amazing community because this whole unraveling of unhelpful beliefs is a process, and I want you to be very gentle with yourself. But the reality is that you and I both know your soul is nagging at you, telling you that there's more out there for you. In my case, I remember feeling like my soul was telling me there was another level inside of me that was just waiting to be unlocked. And I remember thinking, how do I do this? I don't know how to break through that glass ceiling. And I could feel it internally. So there's a saying that as soon as the student is ready, the teacher appears. And so all you have to do is decide that you want to make that change and that you are ready to step into the unknown and the discomfort to grow. And if you're in the middle of that season of the in between, knowing that you already made the decision or your soul is nagging at you to make the decision and actually taking a step towards that beautiful future, I want to give you encouragement today, knowing that the uncertainty and the fear that you're experiencing is so normal. And the reality is that you're going to get through it because, humble warrior, you are such a badass that you can't not do it, right? The question that I'm offering you today, though, is your soul going to drag you by the hair to do it? Or are you willingly going to enter into this partnership with yourself where you decide that you are worthy of all of your dreams and goals? And you're going to get there anyway. So I'm really excited either way. But financially, especially, is a big thing where it's not about the money, right? It's never actually about the money. Money is a tool that we use to create the life and career that we want. It's an exchange of energy, right? Money in reality is just a piece of paper. It's a tree with ink on it. And we are the ones that ascribe meaning to that piece of paper. And so when we talk about the dreams that you have financially, a lot of you are experiencing some guilt and shame around the idea that you want more money. There's actually nothing wrong with that. What's actually happening is that you want to have more financial abundance so that you can create more solutions, create more joy for yourself and for others. And again, if you've been listening to this podcast for any length of time, you know that, again, paradoxically, as soon as you focus on your internal goals and connecting with yourself, that the abundance is going to start flowing naturally because that partnership is going to result in finally you self-actualizing. And in order for you to self-actualize and actually build that business or that nonprofit or hit that next promotion level or whatever it is that you're looking to do professionally, you're going to need money to build that dream, period, dot. And so if you're resonating with the idea that you're not where you want to be professionally or financially, that you're meant for more, then you too are a humble warrior. And then our 7th characteristic of the day is you don't understand your own basic needs. Now, before you tell me that, yes, I do actually know what my needs are, like, yes, we know you need food and shelter and water and stuff like that. But almost 100% of the clients that I work with, when they tell me about these beautiful big goals and dreams, and I tell them, well, what do you actually need to be able to achieve that? Almost 100% of the time, what they actually tell me is, I don't know. And what's funny is, saying the words I don't know can be very scary to a high achiever like yourself because you're used to knowing and you're used to having all the answers. But what I love about that answer is twofold. is first, it acknowledges that you have the courage to admit that you don't know, which most people don't feel comfortable doing with other people. They think it's a sign of weakness. I actually think it's a sign of power because it's actually the fact that there's hidden gold in your soul that we have to go mining for. And that is my favorite thing to do. And so, not knowing what your basic needs are in a lot of ways is really sad because what accompanies that realization is the knowledge that you've been negating your own basic needs for basically almost the entirety of your life. And this process will ultimately entail us getting back in touch with what those basic needs are. I remember the first time I realized I didn't know what I needed on a basic level was when I was in marriage counseling. So, my husband and I were in a session with our counselor, and I don't remember how we got on the topic. I think I was talking about not really feeling super emotionally connected or something like that. And the counselor said, "What do you need in this marriage to feel really good about yourself and feel good about you both?" And I remembered the answer, "I don't know," popping into my head. And I remembered instantly just feeling super brokenhearted because, again, I was the person that people came to for answers. And I couldn't even answer for myself what I needed from my husband to feel loved by him. Like, how crazy was that? And my homework that day was to actually go figure out what I needed. And I remember when I finally got to the root of it and I understood the answer, I was so embarrassed. And honestly, it was something really stupid. I think in the beginning, it was something like I needed a hug, right? Like sometimes I needed hugs to feel better because I'm a physical touch love language person. If you don't know what I'm talking about, check out the 5 love languages. Really great little framework for couples. But physical touch is one of the ways that I feel really loved and it helps fill my like love bucket. And I remember in the next session wearing a hoodie and using the hoodie to cover my face while I told my husband that I needed more hugs. And maybe to you, the listener, that doesn't sound like a really big deal, but it was a really big deal to me. And I feel myself getting a little bit emotional just thinking about that memory because it took me probably the most courage I'd ever had up until that point to say that. And it's funny because a lot of people comment, "Oh, Alani, you've done all sorts of crazy things and you've gone to war and you've been shot at and bombed and all this stuff." That stuff was nowhere near as scary to me as having to tell my spouse that I needed more hugs. Oh my gosh, it was terrifying. But I knew that was the only path I could take in order to feel more connected to myself and ask for help from my spouse in not only doing that for myself, but in also feeling more connected with him. And just like going to the gym with anything else, it's a progression. You have to keep practicing and disciplining yourself to ask for what you need. And it gets less and less scary the more you practice it. And so, if you're struggling with asking for your basic needs, don't hesitate to reach out. You can DM me at Mighty Sparrow Coaching on Facebook, Instagram, or LinkedIn, and I'm happy to encourage you through it. And when we talk about these characteristics as a whole, the reality is that you can continue living this way and you're still going to be very successful on the outside because you are a successful person. But staying in these characteristics, so being introspective to a fault, being a control freak, crushing everyone else's goals but not yours, thinking there's something wrong with you, craving deeper connection but not having it, not having the finances or the professional success that you want. This all hurts you because number one, time is a finite resource. Okay. You are a maximizer. I know without talking to you that you're the kind of person that when you're laying on your deathbed, you want to look back and say, "I left it all out on the field. I loved hard and I worked hard and I did great things." And by great things, I don't mean like you don't have to save the world or be a billionaire or anything like that. Doing important things and having a big impact can look very differently to a lot of different people, but doing it aligned with who you really are and what you're really meant to do is what's most important. So we don't want to waste any more time. We want you to get on the road and start living your best life and start connecting with yourself and connecting with others. Because when that joy comes flooding your heart, you're never going to want to go back to living how you have been. Now, I want you guys to know that if you don't turn this podcast off and don't start chasing your dreams immediately and connecting and all the things, that's totally okay. It is a process. What we've actually done is planted a seed today for you. That seed is going to get watered and fertilized, it's going to germinate, and it's going to bear fruit at some point. And so please don't beat yourself up, because I know that's something you're going to do, where you're going to say, as soon as you lacked the courage to ask for something you needed, you're going to throw your hands up and say, oh, I messed up at that, right? Because you're a control freak. And it takes a minute to get out of control freak mode. And so you're not expected to do it perfectly the first 10th or 100th time, but I do expect you to show up and keep trying. That's what's most important. Asking for the help that you need on this journey of becoming the very best version of yourself is what's most important. Now, number two, I know that you're capable of continuing to live the rest of your life in these modes if you need to. That's one of the most heartbreaking things about the work that I do is some people choose to stay in these spaces because they know how to operate within them, right? In a lot of ways, it's very similar to being in an abusive relationship with somebody else. A lot of people ask, why don't victims of domestic violence leave their abusive partners? And the reality is, it's because on some level, they love that person, right? They think they love that person, and they know how to survive in that situation. And so they could step out of their comfort zone and choose a better life, but that requires going into the unknown. The circumstances you've been living in for the last however many years or decades of your life, you know how to survive and you know how to maximize because you've done it. So this is an invitation for you to step into that next level of who you were meant to be. Number three, trying to fit into what the world says you need to be actually leads to more separation from yourself. So again, staying in these old characteristics is actually going to create more separation within yourself. You're going to feel more and more disjointed as time goes along. The world tells everybody you need to fit in. And of course, we're community based. Our brains have not evolved to 2024. They're still stuck in prehistoric times in many ways. And back in the day, if we didn't have community, we would probably die because we didn't have shelter. We didn't have hunter-gatherer partners that could help us maximize our ability to get food, right? So our brain will set off alarm bells saying, oh my gosh, you can't be separate from the world. You can't be weird. You can't do anything that makes you different from folks. You have to fit in. And society itself, to a certain degree, is a little bit of a control mechanism. When it comes to power players, they want you to stand in line and do exactly what you're told and not be any different from anybody else because of these control elements. Except you and I both know we can't be controlled. So the truth is that at the end of the day, when you do try to conform, it creates more of that split between you and who you're supposed to be. And what we're actually trying to do is mend that relationship so that you are aligned and fully integrated with yourself. So heart, head, mind, all of those things are fully working together. And so you guys, I hope that this resonated with you today. I hope you got a little bit of insight into how you operate as a humble warrior. I know the vast majority of you are sitting there saying, there's no way that I could be on your level, Alani. I hear this a lot of, oh, but you're such a badass and you've done all these crazy things and the terrorist hunting and the espionage and da-da-da and all this stuff, right? It's very gracious of you guys to make those comments, but I truly believe that God created that life story for me to show you that if God can make a fun-sized senior Pentagon bodyguard or terrorist hunter or human trafficker hunter, that you too can do absolutely incredible things. And I know that there are incredible things in store for you if you have the courage to embrace the things that you think are your weaknesses, because they're actually the key to unlocking your greatest superpower. So, Joyful Money Club started this month. We still have time if you'd like to join. It is a monthly group coaching event where we dig into all of the limiting beliefs that we have around money and finances and abundance so that you can learn how to receive more of it. DM me if you have questions about that. And I'm also really excited to announce the Humble Warrior Institute of Excellence. It's going to be my new virtual course with group coaching. So you're going to have access to dozens of modules that will help you in the privacy and quiet of your own house to learn about your imposter syndrome and undo all of that mechanism and infrastructure and rebuild it so that you can truly be aligned with who you were meant to be. I'm so excited about this, you guys. It's going to have weekly group coaching. So if you have any questions after you've watched some of the modules, you can come. We can do some coaching live so you can get answers tailored to your specific experience. And so I can't wait for you guys to see it. It's going to be so fun and beautiful, and you're going to be connected to a community of other amazing badass world changers just like you. And so I'm so thankful to be on this amazing ride with you guys. I love you guys so much. February is going to be all about self-love and learning how to actually fill that cup so that, again, you can work from the overflow, not from the scarcity. And I'm really stoked about the guests that I have and the material I'm going to be teaching. So I love you guys so much. I'm so proud of you. Have a great rest of your January, and we'll see you in February. Take care. Bye, guys. If you enjoyed this episode and would like some help overcoming your imposter syndrome, check out the free life purpose exercise on my website and subscribe to my blog. If you already know what your life purpose is and are ready to crush or harness your imposter syndrome, then you're going to love my best-selling book, The Least of Us: How Your Weakness Points to Your Greatest Power, available on Amazon and all major book retailers. Or you can hit me up at alani@mightysparrowcoaching.com to discuss private coaching or corporate and government training. That's ALANI@mightysparrowcoaching.com. Listen, there's only ever been one you, and there will only ever be one you. And you have a specific gift to give that the world desperately needs. Don't let your self-doubt be the thing preventing you from living your most joyful and impactful life. Until next time, I'm always cheering you on.